They thought she was just another girl with a dream. They didn't expect her to change the rules. The conference room lights buzzed faintly, their hum filling the gaps between shallow coughs and muted clicks of laptop keys. Around the long table, men in sharp suits and women in stiff blazers leaned into their screens, faces washed pale by the glow. It was a boardroom built to intimidate. Cold marble floors, frosted glass walls, and a city skyline stretching endlessly outside. No one noticed the girl in the back. She sat with a notebook angled slightly toward the wall, a pen tucked neatly behind her ear. Her chair was too big, the sleeves of her thrift store blazer too loose. She looked like a student who had wandered into the wrong room. But her eyes were awake, too awake, and they caught everything. Her name was Amira Below, a 23-year-old data intern at Rexford Systems, a powerful logistics firm that prided itself on efficiency. Amira wasn't supposed to be here. She'd been called into the meeting by accident when her manager forwarded the calendar invite to the wrong A below. The executives didn't bother correcting the mistake. They let her sit quietly at the far end of the room, assuming she'd scribble notes and stay invisible. One man, broad-shouldered with a voice like gravel, made it clear. "We're not looking for interns with ideas," he said with a chuckle, flipping through slides he barely understood. "We're building real solutions." The room laughed. Amira looked down, her pen frozen mid-stroke. If they knew who she was, they would have chosen their words more carefully. Born in Lagos, raised in Houston, Amira had lived her whole life in the in-between. Too American for some, too Nigerian for others. She grew up watching her mother stretch every dollar, her father working night shifts he never complained about. Amira had one gift, an ability to see patterns where others saw chaos. By 17, she could map out bus routes in her head, predicting delays down to the minute. By 19, she was teaching herself Python between shifts at a diner. She didn't have the pedigree of her co-workers, the Ivy League names, the fathers who played golf with board members. But she had something rarer, hunger sharpened into skill. Rexford Systems wasn't just another logistics firm. They had government contracts, defense contracts, the kind of deals whispered about in trade papers. And now, they were rolling out a new predictive routing model, software designed to optimize supply lines for military equipment. Billions of dollars were at stake. Mistakes weren't supposed to happen. But mistakes had already happened, and Amira was the only one who saw them. As the meeting dragged on, executives clicked through charts and graphs. Every slide looked polished, but beneath the surface, Amira could see the cracks. The algorithm they were bragging about, the one designed to prevent shipment delays, wasn't stable. She had tested it herself, running late-night simulations on her borrowed laptop. It wasn't just inefficient. It was dangerous. If the system went live as it was, entire convoys could vanish into bottlenecks. Medical supplies could sit idle while troops waited. Lives could be lost. Her pulse quickened as she weighed the choice: stay silent or speak. The manager sneered again. "We don't need to waste time on hypotheticals. The model's ready." Amira's voice, when it broke the air, was calm. "Actually, if we run that same test with your current model, it'll crash. I ran the simulation last night." The room froze. Heads turned. The suits leaned back in their chairs, smirks tugging at the corners of their mouths. The gravel-voiced executive laughed. "And you are?" She lifted her chin. "Amira Bello, data intern." The laughter deepened, but Amira didn't flinch. She slid her notebook across the table, pages filled with hand-drawn graphs and data points. "I ran the convoy through Route 17. At first, everything looked fine. But then, watch." She flipped to another page. "The trucks pile into a choke point here, outside Port Cisco. The system doesn't redirect them. They just stop. Supplies sit for 48 hours. In a real scenario, that delay would cost lives." The room murmured, half skeptical, half intrigued. The manager leaned forward, irritation coloring his voice. "That's impossible. Our redundancy tests accounted for bottlenecks." "One more thing," Amira said, turning the notebook again. Her handwriting curved across the page, neat and deliberate. This is what you missed." She revealed the alternate routing she had designed. A subtle change, two adjusted variables in the prediction model that completely bypassed the choke point. Silence rippled across the table. The CTO, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. How did you test this? Amira met her gaze. I don't have the clearance for the live model, so I rebuilt it from the fragments I could access. Your error logs are sloppy, but the architecture is predictable. I stress-tested it against my own simulation. It failed twice. The silver-haired woman raised an eyebrow. You rebuilt our system from scraps. Amira nodded once. Yes. The CTO's lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but into something closer to respect. The gravel-voiced executive shifted uncomfortably. Even if she's right, this is a minor issue. We'll patch it later. Amira didn't raise her voice, but her words cut through. You won't patch it later, because later will be too late. What Amira didn't say, but knew, was worse. The flaw in the model wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. Someone had left the back door open, a manipulation of code designed to funnel shipments through vulnerable checkpoints. If exploited, convoys could be hijacked, supplies stolen, and entire missions sabotaged. She hadn't told anyone yet, not until she was sure. And now, all eyes were on her. The room, once buzzing with dismissal, fell into silence. For the first time, everyone was listening. The silver-haired CTO broke the silence. Ms. Bello, I want you to prepare a full report by tomorrow morning, and I want to see your simulation. The gravel-voiced executive opened his mouth to protest, but the CTO cut him off. No excuses. If she's right, this changes everything. Amira's hands trembled beneath the table, but her voice was steady. I'll have it ready. The meeting moved on, but the air had shifted. The intern no one noticed had become the only person who mattered. That night, Amira sat in her apartment, a one-bedroom above a laundromat that smelled faintly of detergent and mildew. Her laptop hummed, screen casting pale blue light on her face. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, unease twisted in her gut. The model didn't just fail. It rerouted. Always the same way, always toward the same choke points. Once could be a coincidence. Twice was negligence. But over a dozen simulations. That was sabotage. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could report it officially, but she knew how it would go. They'd bury her in jargon, dismiss her as paranoid, maybe fire her for breaching clearance. So she dug deeper. Line by line, she traced the code, an ocean of symbols and commands, until she found it, a hidden function buried under layers of comments, written to look like harmless redundancy. Whoever planted it was smart, very smart, and sloppy. They left a name, Eldorian. The next morning, the boardroom was quieter, tension stretched thin. Amira presented her findings with unshakable calm. She showed the manipulated function, the rerouting patterns, the predictable choke points. The silver-haired CTO's face hardened. This isn't a bug. This is an exploit. All eyes turned to Lance Dorian, the gravel-voiced executive who mocked Amira the day before. His jaw flexed, but his expression stayed unreadable. That's absurd, he snapped. Anyone could have doctored those logs. Amira slid a printed page across the table. Except I didn't. This is your access signature, embedded in the code. Silence. The CTO's voice cut through. We'll need to escalate this to federal oversight. Dorian's glare burned into Amira. She met it evenly, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. For the first time, the predator looked cornered. Amira knew what she'd done. She had turned herself into a target. That evening, walking home, she felt the shift. A black SUV idling too long across the street. A man pretending to check his phone, but glancing up each time she passed a window. At the laundromat entrance, her landlord handed her a slip of paper, no return address. Just a single sentence, typed clean. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. Amira folded it, tucked it in her pocket, and walked upstairs. But instead of fear, a sharper clarity settled over her. Whoever wrote that note underestimated her the same way the executives had. And underestimation was her weapon. The next day, a quiet knock sounded at her cubicle. It was the CTO, Dr. Eleanor Price. She didn't smile, didn't soften. She just spoke plainly. You went over your head, but you're also the only one who sees the whole picture. Amira blinked. Why me? Because you rebuilt our system from scraps. Because you noticed what all of us missed. And because the people behind this think you're small enough to crush. That's exactly why we need you. For the first time, Amira wasn't just an intern. She was a partner in something bigger. Together, they traced the exploit beyond Dorian's name. It wasn't just him. Logs connected to offshore servers, shadow companies, and false contractors. Someone was funneling sensitive shipments, military-grade equipment, into black markets. Billions of dollars were bleeding from the system. In Weiss, Amira discovered a scheduled rollout of the sabotaged model. In 10 days, it would go live across international supply chains. If not stopped, convoys carrying weapons and medical supplies would be rerouted into the hands of whoever paid for them. This wasn't just corruption. It was treason. Amira and Dr. Price devised a plan. They'd bait the saboteurs. Amira would run a dummy simulation, one that appeared to replicate the exploit but actually logged every access point. Anyone who touched it would expose themselves. For 3 nights straight, Amira barely slept. She coded at her kitchen table, cold pizza crust piling beside her laptop. Her fingers ached, her eyes burned, but her mind was sharper than ever. She had grown up in chaos. Endurance was her inheritance. Finally, the trap was ready. The simulation ran. Within hours, someone bit. Logs spiked with activity. Unauthorized access pinging from multiple continents, routed through shells but converging on one endpoint, a server registered to Dorian Holdings. Amira stayed at the screen, heart hammering. She had him, but then she noticed something else. Another signature. Not Dorian's. This one was encrypted differently, buried under layers of masking. It was older, more deliberate. Whoever this second player was, they had been inside Rexford's system for years. The realization chilled her. Dorian wasn't the mastermind. He was just a pawn.